one with I wanna be the one with you. I wanna be the one with I wanna be the one with you.
What up, everybody? I'm Caleb.
And I'm Micah.
And we'd like to welcome you to This Life Together.
That's TWO.
Together.
Dramatic whisper. So, on today's episode, we're going to be talking about what else but daddies. Not zaddies.
No.
Not a zaddy, not a sponsor, but your daddy. Like, this my daddy house.
Is a zaddy a sponsor solely?
It could be.
Okay. Yeah, we talking about daddies.
I ain't never had no zaddy.
We talking about daddies. You got a zaddy now?
I got a husband.
Oh, that's one of the
That's
things.
above a zaddy.
It can be conjoined.
Yes, daddy.
It's conjoined to word? Did I just make that up?
Oh, that's a word.
Oh, okay, it sounded weird when I said it.
Somebody had to learn that word.
Yeah. But, we talking about daddies.
And more importantly, the relationships that fathers play, not only just in their son's life, but also in their daughters' lives and the lack thereof. Because Father's Day is right around the corner. Obviously, we want to make sure that we say shout out to all the great dads out there. Thank you for everything that you do and for all the contributions that you make. The impact that you have on your children's lives makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think it's very important. I think it's very important that we do highlight both parents. Mothers, I think get a lot of recognition and acknowledgement, just considering the fact that I feel like people just rule dads out, and that's not even just a black thing or a white thing. I feel like that's just a universal thing. Like people just completely.
I don't think people rule dads. I don't think that's it.
I think it is. I think people do. I think people even when they do have dads, I feel like the acknowledgement and the recognition isn't always there.
I can't say that because I be trying to ask my daddy what he want to do for Father's Day, and he be like, "Baby, just give me some socks and a t-shirt."
But that's real though. Men are it's very low maintenance a lot of the time, and he content with that because
reasons why I just cook my daddy food.
Yeah, I mean that can't be mad with that either. You can't never have too many socks. That's why you always ask for socks because you always once you get a little hole. Then it's just you can't get
a man thing.
It is. Because y'all always wear heels. Y'all don't wear socks with heels.
You could.
Then you would look like a clown.
That's a new fashion statement. Open toe sandals with socks.
Don't do that.
Shout out to YSL. They started that.
Yeah, they started all these high fashion places
they probably
starting all this stupid stuff
from somebody else, but they made it.
It's like, let's try making everything look like dad shoes and feel us. It's like, you remember?
Don't you dare come for my dad's shoes. I love my disruptors.
Anyways, but YSL will charge $7 billion for them, and everybody like, oh man, these the new shoes.
Why on the Fila version?
Balenciagas is $500, but it's the same shoe as the Fila. It just ain't got no Fila on it. Like, beat it. Anyways, we talking about daddies.
Okay.
Supposed to be talking about daddies.
We are. We just went up on a whole tangent.
Yeah, you start talking about fashion.
It was irrelevant. Anywho, so starting off, I mean, for me, obviously, I'm a woman, and my experience with my dad, whether it be an astounding one or not, is going to be different from an experience that a man or a boy would have with his dad. But I guess it really just boils down to also, like, babe, for you, what does fatherhood look like? Or what did you expect from your dad and even your stepdad as a kid? What did you feel like they were supposed to do?
To be honest, it really wasn't a lot that I really expected it. I mean, I guess you can, depending on how the person, obviously my stepdad or my dad will look at it, they can determine whether or not they feel like it was a lot or not. But I honestly feel as a kid, really all you really want from either your parents, in my opinion, is just acknowledgement and just like you want to, I think depending on how you're raised, at least how I was raised, it was almost like I was always feeding or looking for, what's the word I'm looking for? Like kind of like approval, because you want to make sure that you're doing what you're basically supposed to be doing. And the only thing that you have to put that up against is what your parents basically told you what you're supposed to be doing. So for me growing up, it really, for a while, it was just, I didn't really know where to look for that definition of what a father should be, because I had both my biological father and I had my stepfather both in my life at the same time. But even in that, I feel like as children, we were kind of stuck in that weird middle ground where my dad and my stepdad, I don't think that they really ever fully learn how to coexist or learn how to. Now we have the term blended family. I don't know when that actually became a thing, but I think that
I don't know if that applies.
well, it's not not necessarily, but
more so, or maybe I'm wrong, but I thought that was more so like if both of
yeah,
y'all
that's
have
true.
kids.
Yeah, that's true. My bad, wrong definition. But essentially, that was almost like from my stepdad's point of view, it was a blended family.
Yeah, I mean they
So,
had a blended family,
I
but
think
your
everybody-
dad didn't really fit into the equation more so.
Nobody really had they didn't really have defined roles.
It wasn't like Daddy's Home with Will Ferrell.
No. It wasn't two daddies. No, but no. We. So I had my dad. Where we went over his house like every other weekend, but it was kind of like now thinking about it in retrospect, it just seemed forced because that was like obligated by the court system. Obviously, that we had to spend time with him every other week. And then with my stepdad, he lived with us, so it was different. So it was kind of like I know I have a real father, but he was basically there more because I lived with him. So
do
he
you
seemed
feel like
more
that made you biased?
Not necessarily, because I always knew like and I don't have no problem with anybody like, oh well, that's my dad, that's my real dad. Like I never really got into that with them. I kind of just refer to them both as dad primarily. Because it was like they both served their purposes as my father. But to go back to the definition of what I feel like a father is just really looking for that bond of that approval. Like especially as a young man, you really do look for that approval from a male figure, and I think that's honestly how a lot of people get mixed up in the wrong stuff because. Sometimes it could just be a matter of somebody looking out for you when nobody else really was. So then you kind of unknowingly have a father figure that you don't even realize until it's too late. But
what do you mean?
You see, how people are like, oh well, how he get mixed up with those people? And it's like, well,
so
those
you mean
people
like basically running with a bad crowd, like basically you didn't have a father figure, so now you done latched on to the first person that's like
that just
not
gave
even
you something.
necessarily showing you guidance, but really just
looking out,
showing you. Like I get like maybe like into drugs and like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I didn't want to go too deep into it, but just saying like you could be unknowingly giving somebody that
basically whoever has that influence.
Yeah. And as a young man, like I was saying, like you definitely look for that in a male. Your mother, now granted, I give my mom all of the props, and she wasn't a single mother, but you can only get so much from your mom as a young boy, and I feel like that's when the father steps in because they know what it's like to be in your position, especially if it's your biological father, because 9 times out of 10, y'all doing the same stuff. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I look for in a father is just like essentially just being another lifeline. Because I feel like you go to your mother and you go to your father for two different things. But when you only got really one parent to do that to, you got to ask that parent for everything. So that's really my long-winded answer.
I would have to say for me, my definition of a dad would have just been like a protector and somebody who spent time and somebody who made time. And really, I think it's important for a dad to show a young lady how she should be treated by men when it's that time for her to start dating and for people to start dating her rather. But I always wanted to have the closeness with my dad that I had with my mom. Growing up, I didn't have that. And I saw my dad once a week or even sometimes a little bit more frequently, sometimes a little bit less frequently. But when he was around, I never felt like he was coming around to spend that time with me. It was like he was coming around to spend that time with my mom. And so being young, like you don't really notice it, but you notice it. And it had gotten to the point where by the time I was a teenager, I specifically remember growing up there were certain things that even though my dad didn't live with me, that I was expected to do. Like I couldn't wear fingernail polish. I wasn't expected to have toenail polish. Like my grades had to be good, and these were things that he was like really like enforcing, which
That's
is
what I was gonna
crazy.
ask you.
Like basically enforcing these things through my mama. But it was to the point where I remember my mama wouldn't even wear nail polish. My mama still don't really wear nail polish. Partly to me because my daddy has an issue with her wearing nail polish, which is ridiculous to me. But I think growing up, I was really looking for somebody to be an example of what a dad should be based off of what I saw on TV or based off of what I saw other people have with their dads, like my cousins who live with their dads, or even if they did live with their dads. But I saw the relationship and that dynamic that they had with their father. Like he was consistently there. Like they saw their daddy every day. Like they talked to their daddy on the phone or whatever it was. Like I never had that type of relationship with my dad. And that was just something to me like a dad was supposed to do. Like to me, both of my parents were supposed to show me the same kind of love, just in a different way. Like
Right.
they were both supposed to be very hands on, and I didn't really get that from my dad. So for me, it had gotten to a point once I became an adult, and I'm still working on this now. Like you see, even with like us being in a relationship, I've come to understand that he is an adult, I am an adult, we are separate people, and although in a perfect world he would have lived up to my expectations, we fall short of people's expectations all the time. So I try not to let that harbor or linger, or I try not to hold that against him. We don't have a perfect relationship even now, but I love my dad. I respect my dad, even though it's been plenty of times where I've cussed him out. And I think that it's very important for a young lady to just have that example in her life of somebody who can show her not only how a woman should carry herself, which is more so what moms typically do, but also how a young man is supposed to approach her.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because I mean, it's crazy when you think about stuff, when you kind of just sit here and think about, especially like what we're talking about. I didn't even realize until just now when I was trying to formulate my thoughts that I don't think with my biological dad, I never had to talk. About, I never had the sex talk with him. I never was told how to basically, I never was told how to talk to girls or how to approach girls. I really didn't have too much conversation with my dad now that I think about it. Or if I did, it was of minimal substance. Like it really didn't do, it was just us talking and what it didn't have
Yeah.
no, which is fine too, but it's just like,
My daddy was one of those no dating until after you married types.
but
He was one of those.
the only reason I really knew how to basically treat a woman or a girl at the time was through my stepdad when he was just like, and it wasn't even like I was going to him for this advice. He would just be like, nah. Like I think I told you the one thing, like he was like, you never pick a girl up in a dirty car. You can't be that guy. You can't never pick a girl up in a dirty car. For some reason, he said you can never pick a girl up in a pickup truck. And then it was something else. Like it was like all of these weird rules. But it was like in that he was still grooming my brother and I how to treat women when we went out. But yeah, it's funny to think about that now. Like I never had that talk or that conversation with my dad, and I think that it could have came off a little different if I would have had that conversation with him. But I actually had the sex talk with my brother, my older brother, and I think that's why my mom calls my brother Daddy.
I got a brother daddy too. So it happens when you get that age gap.
I heard her say it one time, and I had to check myself. Like, what you just say? She called him my brother Daddy, and it's because he has that. My brother is 9 years older than me, so he's gone through everything that I'm going through already, and we have a more loose relationship, I guess. And I could just go to him for pretty much everything. So a lot of the stuff that I typically would have gotten from my father, I got from my brother. So I think it's important for both men and women to have somebody that they can confide in with those things that they may or may not be even comfortable with asking, because those things are the things that really shape and mold you as a person. And it's kind of hard to break that stuff once you get once you get up there in age.
Yeah, I think it can be real crucial to the way that you develop as a person and how you treat other people around you when you don't have like that kind of balance. I mean, obviously there are plenty of people who have both their mom and their dad in their lives actively that still don't turn out well based off of like their own standards or the standards of those around them, whatever, what have you. But I think it's funny because my brother daddy is still so people. I have two older siblings, like way older. Like my brother is like 17 years older than I am, and the other brother is 20 years older than I am. So huge age gap. My brother was so used to being the youngest. Like you got to understand what it's like to be the youngest sibling. So you're essentially the favorite, because I mean, let's face it, the youngest is typically the favorite. You're typically the one who gets the attention. Like you come around, even if it's really not a difference, your other sibling gonna think it's a difference just because they older and you like the new shiny toy. Anyway, for my brother, even at the age of 17, it was like it still wasn't sticking with him. Like he wasn't gonna be the youngest no more or the baby no more. And then for me to be the only girl too, I think that also makes a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But it's hilarious because he was like my babysitter, but at the same time, he was so much older than me. It was like he took care of me. He took me everywhere. Like he was buying me stuff. We had matching outfits. Like even though he wasn't my daddy, and I very well knew that he was my brother, like he was the closest thing besides my granddaddy to a dad. Like my granddaddy was so much older. It wasn't like he was picking me up and dropping me off on a daily basis, or like I don't know, taking me to the mall or taking me to the movies. Like my granddaddy was older, but he was still like a pivotal father figure in my life up until he passed. Me and my mom and my siblings, we actually lived with him. Like his house is still a house that my mom lives in. Like he was a huge influence, but my brother really made sure like I was taken care of. So it's funny because once he had his own kids, the shift in our relationship obviously happened because he really a dad. Like he really has a kid. So even in that, like that was another situation. I was like, okay, dang. Like that's obviously different than our relationship because that's his actual child.
Right.
And that's something that I even had to adjust to. But I can say like growing up, that's one of the areas where we have found balance, but also I can say I personally may have expected him to do things that it was not in his wheelhouse to do. It was not his responsibility to do because for a time he was doing it. Like he was being that father figure. I remember one time when I was in high school, I was a senior in high school and I had came from a date and my brother saw my date kiss me in the car. My brother was mad at me for a whole week because he just felt like I can't believe like you growing up. Like he was mad. Like talk to his wife about it and complain every single day. And Caleb is laughing because Caleb knows my brother. So he was like,
I was laughing because you shouldn't have been kissing no boy in no car. Better believe once we have a daughter, it's a wrap.
And that's fine. So I agree with you. But he was like really upset. Imagine at this point, I'm almost 18.
That don't mean nothing. You was a child. You were
Can
a
I
babe.
finish my story?
You were a babe. Continue.
So I think also another thing with having these relationships with the particular men that I know, it's like, are you more so concerned because like I'm your little sister and I'm growing up, or I'm your daughter and I'm growing up, or are you concerned because dudes might treat me the way that you'd have treated some of the people that you'd have dated? Like it's twofold, exactly. But that's not really a factor. When if I'd have been a little brother, he wouldn't have cared. Yes, he would not have cared.
He would have cared in a different way.
If I would have been the little brother kissing a girl in the car, he would not have cared.
He would have been in the window like,
exactly.
That's my dog.
Exactly. It'd have been a completely different situation.
But it's funny that you bring that up though, just having that representation, because we both had the similar stories where we had brothers that were not old enough to be our dads, but old enough to serve basically a dual purpose. But that made me think about the fact of I had a lot of male representation, despite the fact that my family is a female dominant family. Like I think I kind of just branched out, even if it was someone that was younger than me. I feel like I connected with pretty much all of the male relatives that I had, and I looked to them for different examples that they, different purposes that they serve. But like all of my uncles, my great uncles, my older cousins, I looked at them either as examples of things not to do or things to do, and I think all of that together molded. I'm sorry, y'all. I had to look at Mike because at first I didn't know what was happening. It was weird. She was just over here rubbing my face and my head, but it was like she was rubbing my head all over, and it was just luckily. I don't have a haircut, but it's just like it was equivalent to you like brushing my hair backwards. That's how I felt, but. But yeah, just looking for that male representation, I think, is important too for men, because especially if you don't have that in the household, or even if you do, you're gonna find examples elsewhere. So it's important for those examples to be good examples, because the thing is, somebody is watching you at all times.
I think it's important for them to be real examples. Obviously, the expectations that we gain from watching TV or even seeing other people and how they interact with their parents, you never know, like, what's fully going on behind the scenes. Like, TV is TV, and they can write the show however they want to write the show. Obviously, we would have all loved to have a dad like Uncle Phil, because Uncle Phil was the GOAT. But in real life, like, Uncle Phil could have had a gambling problem. Uncle Phil could have been a drunk. It's real. Like, we see people and we don't know their whole story. We don't know everything that goes on. So it's very easy to make an assumption that somebody else is this great representation, which also shatters your expectations if you find out they're not that.
I mean, when you find out that they're a real person. Because it's going to happen regardless.
Regardless of who it is. Yeah. I've even had those moments with my mom where it's like, for a long time, I say probably until I was 18, like, if you'd asked me, like, has your mom ever lied to you? I'd be like, nah. Obviously not true. But, I mean, you just put your parents on a different level of... That's a lot of pressure. That's a whole lot of pressure we put on our parents. I had to have a conversation with my cousin Shell regarding my mom and my dad's relationship, funny enough, and then how that tied into my relationship with my dad. I felt like at the time, because me and my dad didn't have a great relationship, that my mom and my dad shouldn't have any relationship. I'm your child. I'm your favorite child.
You deemed yourself his favorite child?
She deemed me her favorite child.
Oh, I thought you were talking about your daddy.
No, I don't know who his favorite child is. It's probably me. But, hey, I can live with that. I know he loves me. That's good enough. But I just really felt like it was her responsibility. I'm her child, and you always hear people say, put no man before your kids, which is a lie. Because when these babies get here, guess what? Husband is still husband.
Wow.
God is God first and foremost, but husband is husband.
Okay.
So wife is wife too. Don't get it twisted now.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Anyway, so just talking to her about that, she had to point out to me the fact that this person is a whole person with a whole life outside of me as their child, essentially, which could be really hard to grapple with and deal with as you are becoming an adult. And once you become an adult, I know so many people who, whether their parents have done all right by them or horrible by them or whatever it is, like that really does factor into who we are and who we become. And it's very hard for people to get to a place where they really accept, like, okay, yeah, I had these expectations of you, but you didn't meet them, but you're a person. And so
with that being said, how would you sum up the impact that your dad has had on you and your life?
Oh, I would say he's the reason I've learned forgiveness. Like, my dad my dad is an ongoing test of, well, not even a test. I can't say that at this point, but always just me being forgiving and loving and putting pride aside, regardless of whether I feel like that person deserves it or not. And that's not to say I'm going to let somebody dog me out or treat me bold, because like I said, even he didn't get the words occasionally. But I can honestly say I have no hard feelings towards my father. I love my father. I call him right now and we would have a conversation. And that's the relationship that we have. I think it got to the point where I just was able to be content with the parameters of our relationship. And yeah, I think just forgiveness. I've literally had several instances with my dad where he said things or done things that he should have apologized for, but he didn't apologize for them, and he's not going to apologize for them. So I can decide to be bitter and angry and hold that against him and have no relationship with him whatsoever. Or I could just be like, you know what, God, it's not that deep. I got a dad. I'm going to make the most of that, and I'm going to honor him while he's here, because that's what I'm supposed to do. And just keep it moving.
For me, I think that if anybody knows me, and I feel like you done said it a couple of times, but I feel like my whole demeanor, I feel like I kind of get it from him. And I say that because, excuse me, he's probably the most humble person I know. I don't think I've ever seen my dad angry. Now, granted, he could just do a really good job at hiding it. I'm more than positive he's been pissed before.
I think your dad just removes himself from situations before it gets to the point of him coming out of himself. Because I've seen your dad get real close.
When?
He was on the phone with you. Matter of fact, I believe you were on the phone with him, or maybe Brianna was on the phone with him. And yeah, it was Brianna. And they were having a conversation about something, and then your mom like started asking him some questions about something, like kind of coming at him, like
I don't know where I was at. She was
kind of going at him, and he just was like, "Have a good day," and just hung up the phone.
What that sound like?
It got to the point where he just was like, "Yeah."
God bless
like
you.
At first, it was like. He was kind of like going back and forth, and then it dawned on him like, wait, why am I going back and forth? And he just like, all right, have a good day. And he just hung up the phone.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't think I've ever really seen him get angry. And he just real calm and collected. I think he does a really good job at remaining calm and collected. And I think that for the little that I did really get to, I wouldn't say the little, but seeing that I didn't get to spend 100% time with him, I think that he actually shed more onto me than I gave him credit for. Yeah. So I think he taught me how to be humble without really actually. He taught me a lot of stuff without actually telling me. So
just by being the example.
Yeah, which is also very important, because sometimes you can say whatever. But if you're not doing it, then did it really mean anything? So he taught me how to be humble. He taught me how to just stay reserved and calm in situations that.
That's why you was daddy now.
Okay. I think he was one of the biggest proponents of me. It just like it's gonna all work out. So that's usually why no matter how mad I get about something, I'll just try to really enforce that in myself that it's all gonna work out. That and so I never went to church with my mom growing up, and we only went with my dad. Majority of the time we went every other weekend that we were over there with him, but even sometimes on Sunday we weren't doing nothing. So he would come, and our church just happened to be less. Our church was like right down the street, so he would come pick us up, and we would go to church even on Sundays when I was with my mom. Now, granted, I fell asleep every Sunday, probably 85 to 90% of the time, up until I was like 13. Sorry, Lord. But just knowing that, you know, he had a relationship with God. He was really the first relationship. He was the first person I've seen that had a relationship with God. and it didn't really seem obligatory. It didn't really seem like, he was doing it because, yeah, he just wasn't doing it out of obligation. He didn't feel like he needed to go. I feel like he was going because he wanted to go, and he was taking us with him, and that was really serving more of an example and kind of ultimately led me back. That, and I think his ability to be candid with people also, that, and just overall being well-mannered and kind. So I think that all kind of rolled up into a ball and basically came off on me. So now that I think about it, although I didn't really have a lot of the talks or conversations with my dad, I feel like he was more of the example, the walking example that I needed in that regard. So even if I didn't talk to him about women, I never seen him raise. I don't think I've ever even seen my dad yell. I don't remember ever getting whooped by my dad. Yeah, like now that I think about it, it's a lot of stuff that he probably did that actually molded me a lot more than stuff that I actually heard. Because like we already said, people are people, and we got to be able to acknowledge that and remember that we are also a person, and we will also fall
absolutely
well below people's expectations for us. So just because they're our parents, that doesn't really mean that they're angelic, because they have faults, they have slip ups. We all get angry, we all have fears, we all have worries, but that ultimately makes us the person that we are. And we can't really hold that against them for that. But I honestly think that now thinking about it, my dad did serve as more of an example rather than, a talker.
that has to verbally tell you.
Yeah.
I get you. That makes sense. I think I can definitely see just how your dad acts. Like once again, I've never seen your dad angry. I've seen him get like frustrated, but never angry. Obviously, he's super nice and he loves me, so there's that. Like, even it's funny. I remember I was having like car trouble, and coincidentally, we talked about this before, but Caleb's dad stays literally like maybe 2 minutes drive away from my mom. So one day I was at home, I pulled up, and I had got a ride from work that day Caleb came and picked me up from work that day because my battery in my car had just miraculously died. And at this point, it was still winter. And if you live in Michigan, you already know what's up with the winter. It's cold. So him being, the person who I'm seeing, like my fiance obviously was invested in making sure that my car got up and running. But do you know his daddy came over and was like trying to help him fix my car? It's nighttime. He done worked. Like it's cold outside. And they just out there like trying to get my car up and running. Like that just is a testament to me of like not only him being like a good dad in his own way, but also like saying like, yeah, like, not only am I your dad because you're my son, but I'm gonna cover you and your wife too. Like really taking me in. I think that was like cool.
Yeah, I think his that just go back to his attitude, because I think at one point he had a couple of real close friends. He never really ran with a crew, but he always had like basically a person that was just like, that's his road dog. It is funny because a few years ago, I think probably like 4 or 5 years ago now, he ran into one of his best friends from like elementary school, and now it's just like look, they right back in elementary school. Like, hey, where you at? Oh, I'm at such and such house. Like, dang, man, it's like 11 o'clock. You gotta go to work tomorrow. It's like, oh yeah, we working on this house. It's like, what? So, but it's just like that really speaks to like mountains, because it's one of those we didn't have that conversation, but I just think about situations that I've been in where I'm thinking like people. I tell people about the situations where it's like, or somebody will talk about it. Like I think at one point, one of my boys had called me. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning or something crazy. I think he was getting off work. His car had broke down on the way home. Granted, we stayed in the same apartment complex. He ain't called nobody else. He just called me because he knew I was going to answer the phone. I didn't even look at the phone. I answered the phone like, hello? And then he like, hey man, I need you to come pick me up. I didn't even look at the phone until I was on the way out the door to figure out who it was because I knew where they was at. But it's like I basically pushed his car. I was pushing his car. I pushed his car maybe like a mile and a half so he could get home.
In the Honda?
Oh yeah.
Lord, that's what that mug did.
Been through hell. That I think he also taught me loyalty too, because no matter if it was family, friends, or whatever, he'll do whatever he could to be there when he could. Now sometimes he do be going ghost. He don't be answering the phone. I don't know where that man be at. That man work more than anybody I know.
Your daddy might get him a little something.
Nah, he just got 1 trillion jobs. I think he don't like sitting still either. That's probably where I get that from. Sorry.
No, you get that from both of your parents.
That's double the problem.
You get that real honest. Yeah, both of their faces and both of their attention spans.
You be what you see.
Clearly. So with all of that, with everybody having access to social media, what do you feel like is the representation of fathers in today's society?
From what I see, fatherhood is lit. I can't wait to be a daddy. People be going crazy.
What you ask for?
I want kids.
You want kids?
Yeah.
But is you ready for kids?
God gave me a house. God gave me a wife. He gave me 2 cars.
Please hold for this commercial break.
They didn't go how you thought it was going to go, did it? But no, yeah, father. From based on what I see, and granted it is social media, but I do know a lot of fathers that have taken on the responsibility 100% of being a father and taking it serious. And it's not just people that I know through friends of friends. Like, no, these are like my actual friends. And to see how much of a shift they've made in order to make sure that they're doing whatever they can and be there for their children and their wives, I think that speaks mountains to the way I envision fatherhood now. Because beforehand, like I said, I feel like fathers and dads did not get no play. Like, I feel like it was very rare for dads and fathers to get play.
I feel like it's easier for people to see what dads do. And this isn't to knock anybody, because obviously there are both men and women who are not active in their kids' lives like they should be. But I think it was easier to make dads the scapegoat for a long time. And that's putting aside the fact that we got half of the dads locked up in jail. Like, let's just be real. But I think now with social media and all of the insight that we have into other people's lives, you can't really say that you don't see representations of dads and their kids. Like, you see dads posting about their kids every day. You see people that are heavily involved in their kids' lives that are genuinely excited about having kids. Yeah, kids are expensive. It's hard to parent, especially if you never had that representation of what a dad is or was or what they should have been. But I know plenty of people who are great at it. They're doing a good job at it. Case in point, like my brother, he and his wife had a 13-year-old and then had another son. And mind you, at this point, my brother is in his upper 30s, lower 40s. When I tell you my brother still runs around and plays with my nephew like it's nothing, like he's going to make sure that he is who they need. Like, yeah, we're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to fall short. But I can guarantee you that he puts his kids first. And I think that it's so cool to see that dad representation on social media. Like, even when it's Father's Day, you know, people try to put up their bitter post or whatever, like, oh, happy Mother's Day and Father's Day.
Where your daddy at?
Or whatever, you know, oh, like, my dad wasn't around. Everybody has a story and they have their right to their story. We don't know what they went through or what their relationship is with their dad. But I have learned that there are so many dads to be celebrated, so many dads doing great things for their kids.
Uncles.
With no help. Like,
grandparents. There's a lot of people that take up that mantle that don't get the props.
No help. A lot of people, like, that's raising kids that's not even theirs, that they know aren't theirs, and they're still just stepping in and filling that role and filling that void because fatherhood is so important. So we really just wanted to take this episode to kind of dissect, really thank all of the fathers out there, because the roles that you guys play in lives are more important than you know. Think about in that respect to your own life and how having a father or not having a father really created you to be the adult that you are now. And just keep making an impact, keep making an influence, and know that there are like some young boys and even young girls watching to see like how you treat others, how you treat the people that are closest to you, how you treat them, looking up to you, whether you doing what you're supposed to do or not. Somebody looking up to you. So just give them a good example and just thank you for all you do.
I think I want to end this episode on a quote that I saw on a graphic or a T-shirt like 5-6 years ago, and it's forever like been stuck in my head. It was be the person that you needed growing up.
Absolutely. I think that's a good note to end on. Bye.